What if I told you that the very trust you place in your government, the trust that your money, your social security, your rights, and even your safety are guaranteed is something governments have figured out how to sell back to you and profit from? That the system you believe is free, fair, and secure is, in fact, a transaction you're paying for every single day. Today, we're going to unravel the story of how governments monetized trust, why it worked for centuries, where it all started to crack, and what it means for you today. And believe me, the truth is stranger than fiction. Trust isn't just a feeling. It's the invisible currency that makes civilization work. For centuries, societies relied on trust long before paper money or digital banking existed. In medieval Europe, for instance, the crown's word and gold reserves were everything. Merchants didn't carry coins across continents. They carried letters of credit backed by the king's or the state's promise. The concept of trust as currency is older than modern governments. Ancient Mesopotamia used clay tablets to track debts. Roman emperors issued coins stamped with their likeness, signaling, "This is guaranteed by me." But somewhere along the way, the promise became a product, and governments learned they could profit not just from taxes or trade, but from your belief in their legitimacy. Key figures in this story include the early bankers of Renaissance, the financiers of the Dutch East India Company, and eventually central banks like the Bank of England. Each step illustrates the evolution of monetized trust, from tangible gold and silver backing to abstract notions of credit and government bonds. Let's go back to 1694. England is in debt after a series of costly wars. The government needs money, but there's no way to levy enough taxes without sparking rebellion. Enter the Bank of England. The Crown doesn't host borrow. It issues bonds. These bonds promise a return backed by the government's authority. People buy them, not because they get something immediately tangible, but because they trust the state will honor its promise. Essentially, trust became a marketable asset. Across Europe, the same pattern emerged. Governments realized they could raise enormous sums in times of need: wars, infrastructure, colonization without immediate taxation. The key: people believed in the promise of repayment. In other words, trust itself was now monetized. Fast forward to the 19th and early 20th centuries. Industrialization, railroads, and global trade demanded more sophisticated financial systems. Governments, in partnership with banks, expanded the notion of trust into every corner of life. Pensions, social programs, currency systems, and eventually, national debts. In the US, for example, the creation of the Federal Reserve in 1913 didn't just centralize monetary control. It formalized the government's ability to issue debt at scale. Backed by the abstract promise of economic stability, people didn't hold gold. They held notes of trust, and the system worked remarkably well until it didn't. The 20th century is full of cautionary tales. Germany after World War I, Zimbabwe in the 2000s, and the 2008 global financial crises all demonstrate a fundamental truth. Trust is fragile. One, when governments overleverage their promises, inflate debt, or mismanage systems, the very trust they monetize collapses. Citizens and investors suddenly realize that what they thought was a guarantee is just a promise on paper. Hyperinflation, defaulted bonds, and currency crashes are symptoms of the system back. For example, during the 2008 crisis, governments had to step in and effectively buy back trust. Trillions were spent stabilizing banks and bailing out failing institutions, all to restore the faith of the public. This isn't just history, it's a repeated pattern. Trust becomes both the product and the commodity of financial markets, and governments are both the sellers and the monetizing trust isn't free. There are costs hidden in plain sight. First, there's social cost. When citizens realize their trust can be bought, sold, or manipulated, social cohesion erodes. Second, there's economic cost. Bailouts, inflation, and currency devaluation redistribute wealth, often punishing the very people who relied on the system. Finally, there's political cost. Governments that overleverage trust risk legitimacy, civil unrest, or authoritarian backs. The recurring pattern is striking. Each time trust is monetized, crises eventually emerge, and governments must intervene, often with taxpayer money, to prevent total collapse. It's a cycle of trust, monetization, overextension, collapse, and rescue. Today, trust is monetized in new forms. Government bonds are still a key example. But digital currencies, social security systems, and even identity verification platforms are now extensions of the same principle. Consider this. The US national debt recently surpassed $33 trillion. Much of this debt exists purely on paper faith that the government will honor its obligations. And then there's the rise of digital currencies and stablecoins, which are often backed by complex webs of promises, audits, and government regulations. Once again, we are buying trust, just in a different format. The pattern repeats. Governments promise, citizens trust, markets leverage, and crises occasionally force a reckoning. Despite technology, the fundamental dynamics haven't changed. 3 key takeaways. Trust is a currency governments can monetize. Governments don't just tax you, they profit from your faith in the system itself. Your belief is an asset. Second, fragility is inherent. Monetized trust always carries risk. Over-leveraging promises can lead to systemic collapse, affecting everyone. Third, history repeats in cycles. From medieval bonds to digital currencies, the pattern of promise, trust, exploitation, and crisis recurs every few decades. The story of monetized trust is still unfolding. Every time a government or institution issues a new kind of financial instrument, bailout, or digital token, it's asking you to believe. The more abstract the promise, the harder it is to measure risk, and the more critical your vigilance becomes. Next time you hear about national debt, cryptocurrency regulation, or bailouts, ask yourself this: are you dealing with money, or are you dealing with someone else's trust in paying for it? If this story sparked your curiosity about the hidden systems shaping our world, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell. In future videos, we'll dive even deeper into the secret economies, financial mysteries, and history-altering decisions that affect your money, your freedom, and your life, often without you even realizing it. Trust is more than belief. It's a transaction, and now you know the price.